What's up guys, Eli Infante here with another photo breakdown of this photo shoot with Betsy, where in this series we go over todo el pedo. Meaning we're gonna be looking at the straight out of camera image, we're gonna look at all of my Adobe Lightroom settings to get this image, and additionally we're gonna look at all the photos from this photo shoot to see what led up to this shot. And then we're gonna finalize the image. I'm gonna show you my Photoshop retouching process, show you all of my layers, to show you what led to the final image. So with that said, let's not waste any more time guys, let's get started. Now before we start with the Lightroom and Photoshop settings, I do want to give you some prior knowledge about the photo shoot. At this time, I was still using my 5D Mark III and the 50mm lens for this photo shoot. This was a natural light photo shoot, and the reason why I set it up was because my friend Victoria lives out in New York and she was visiting down here for South Texas during the holidays. This photo shoot was about a year ago, around Christmas time. And she has a red Volkswagen. We've used it before with my friend Lane, and it's an awesome, cool, unique, red Volkswagen. So I figured Betsy would be the perfect person to go along with this photo shoot. So this photo shoot was kind of all revolved around this red Volkswagen. Now with that said, now let's jump into Lightroom. Let's look at some of the photos from the photo shoot, and then let's look at the straight out of camera image. So now that we're in Lightroom, let's take a look at the shots prior to getting the final image. Now this photo shoot was in downtown McAllen. I started off with this tree area because I was waiting on my friend Victoria. So I was kind of buying some time until she arrived. And I was just kind of walking down the street and finding a spot that would be good for the car. Now this photo shoot was a year ago. This was in December 23rd of 2017. And so this was, a day before Christmas Eve, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was very, very busy. I was shooting on this street. So we tried to park the Volkswagen off to a curb so that we could, have some space to work with. It was very busy during this time. So it was a lot of cars and I was having to move in and out of the way throughout the photo shoot. Now this was a natural light. I was using my 5D Mark III and my 50mm lens. And I remember being kind of stuck at first because I wasn't sure how to use the car. This was my second time using the car, but the first time I used it with Lane, I only got a few shots. This whole photo shoot was all, based on this car. So I was trying different things, kind of working the shot until we finally got to this little spot here, this little kind of pose. Now, I'll never forget this. The natural light was probably the best natural light I have ever photographed in. The sun was in the direction of Betsy, so it was pointing right at her. And it was just the perfect amount of pop of light onto her. Now, there were some clouds, but the thing about these clouds, which was different, is that they were very faint. So they were barely blocking the sun. So the sun was able still to kind of push its intensity out a little bit, but still give me that soft light. Had there been no clouds, I would have literally had, hard light, and this photo shoot would have looked a lot different. So as I was getting these shots, I kind of really liked this, and it was getting frustrating though, because every time I would stand here on the street, cars would come by and I would have to pause, and then cars would come by and I would have to pause. So here's an example. My friend Victoria did take a BTS here, so cars were kind of coming through here, and I would have to get out of the way each time. Now, I am embarrassed. I don't know what I was thinking this day, but I was wearing all brown shoes, brown khaki pants, brown shirt, brown underwear. I'm joking, I wasn't wearing brown underwear. Maybe I was, but I don't remember. But, it was frustrating because all these cars were coming by and, I couldn't get my shot. So my friend Victoria, I have to credit her. She was just like, hey, you know what, just shoot through the windshield. Why don't you try that? So I started trying that because, the cars were coming by because it was Christmas time. And as I was shooting through there, I still remember telling myself, I was like, you know what, have, Betsy just lay her head against her arm while she's in the car. And I literally got only 2 shots of that. That's how crazy this was. I only got 2 shots of her doing that because as soon as there were no cars, I was so obsessed about going to the street and shooting to the side that I never went back to that shot. It was crazy. So I got lucky with this shot because I literally only got 2. I did get some more shots from this series. Now I have a lot of these shots. I'm looking back at them and I'm like, man, maybe I should go back and edit some of these. So who knows, maybe you'll see me post some of these old school photos because I do got some photos that I never did post. So let's go ahead and take a look at the final image. Let's look at the before and after. So let's open up this image. Let's go into the develop module and let's look at the before and after. Now I did shoot this in RAW. So keep in mind when you look at the straight out of camera before any post-processing, the colors are gonna look flat on purpose because when you shoot RAW, it's meant for you to add the contrast, add the saturation, add more exposure. So if I hit the backslash key, this is what the before image looked like. And then this is what the after image looks like. I'll put them side by side real quick. So view, before and after, and let's put left and right. And there you go. So let's kind of look at the settings that I did to get this image to pop a little bit in Lightroom. So let's, let me double click. I think that's what I'll do. If I can go, let's see, before and after, and take that off. There we go. And let's look at the settings. So the temperature and tint was at 5700 and tint at 4. Now keep in mind these editing that I used here, this is from a year ago. I've changed my editing a little bit. I didn't change anything from a year ago. I just kind of left it the same. So I did bring up my exposure to +2.6. The contrast I put at +30. Now keep in mind at +30, the reason for that was so that I can shoot through the window. I really wanted to see through the window. Without it being at 30, it was kind of hard to see that. So I typically don't go that high on contrast, but in this image I did. The highlights I had at -14, shadows 17, whites at 10, and blacks at -9. Clarity, same thing. I don't typically bring up my clarity to 15, but in this case I did only because I was shooting through the windshield once again. And what really helped see through the window was this dehaze. I put it at 16 and I brought the colors of the vibrance to +20. I did add a subtle S curve in this photo. Now I do add a more in-depth curves in Photoshop. I don't do too much into Lightroom. Now the colors, the hue, I left everything the same there, but the saturation, this is where I did make some adjustments. Orange is at 2, yellow is at +16, greens brought it down to -23, and then blue to 3. The luminance at reds, I brought to -18 because this car was really standing out because of that red, and I wanted to tone it down or really bring it to like a darker red. So that's why I went to luminance at -18. The oranges I did bring to +2 to kind of make her skin shine just a little bit more. The yellows at 18 for the same reason. I did bring the blues down to -23, make the blues darker because of this little blue building back here. Split toning, I did nothing. Noise reduction, I did put at 20. And I did leave a vignette at -8. The grain at 8. And then I also added some blue primary +32. Now, by adjusting the blue primary saturation, it is gonna make the colors pop just a little bit more. So those are my Lightroom settings. I do have some more adjustments that I did make. I did use a radial filter. And if I hover over it, I did add a radial filter with +0.24 and shadows at 7 to kind of make Betsy pop a little bit more. And I also used an adjustment brush on the car. And you'll see there that I brought the exposure. What did I do? Is it this one? There we go. And I did bring the saturation down to -31 there. So I did brush all around this little car to get that red, just tone down just a little bit. It was really shining. Because red is a primary color, our eyes are gonna get really attracted to it. So I really had wanted to, I should say, to tone it down a little bit. So that's why I specifically made a brush to tone it down. Now before we get into Photoshop, I'll leave you with the before and after one more time. So let's put left to right. So keep in mind guys, after I've shown you the Lightroom settings, these settings you do not apply to any of images that you've done because my settings are very specific to my photo. Now if you want a raw file from this photo shoot, let me know in the comments. If I get enough good feedback, you know, I'll throw in a free raw file so you guys can test out some of these settings and see what you guys can come up with. Now, with that said, we're gonna go into Photoshop now. I'm gonna show you my entire process. I'm gonna show you all the layers I use to stack up for the final image. So now we are in Adobe Photoshop. I'm gonna be showing you the layers and the process that I have. Now, keep in mind this editing is from back in a year ago, pretty much. I've changed a lot of things. I even decided to add a 2018 folder with some new stuff that I do now. So let's take a look at the, let me scroll all the way down. Let me show you the before. So this is Lightroom. This is Lightroom edit now. And this is the Photoshop edit where I add a little bit more contrast, my frequency separation, dodge and burn. So let's kind of start this from scratch. I always start off with the blend and retouch layer. What I'm looking for here is I'm looking for any maybe like marks that I want to fix on the skin. You could see that I did add a liquify and I added a little bit more volume in the hair here. So I did push out the hair just a little bit. I did add a frequency separation. I'm gonna zoom in. You'll notice I didn't do too much frequency separation. Betsy's skin already did look pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the before and then the after, and you'll notice that it's really not too much of a difference there. Then I'll add my dodge and burn. And here, same thing, you're not noticing too much of a difference there, just adding just subtle light where I want and subtle little darker areas and shades where I want. I'm gonna zoom out here. Then I add a levels layer where I add a little bit more contrast. Then I have like an eyes layer where I kind of add a little bit more detail, and I really didn't do too much to her eyes because they were already dark as it was, or as it is, I should say. So if you hit the before and then after, you'll notice, yeah, it wasn't really much of a difference there. Then I add a selective color layer. And on the selective color on this specific image, I did bring the reds. Let me zoom out just a little bit more. I did have the reds at +3 on the blacks. I want to say on the blacks colors, yes, the cyans 2, magentas 2, -1 on the yellows, and +1s on the black. Neutrals, left it alone. Whites, I did put the blacks at -1. And I want to say nothing else was modified. I think it was just the reds and the blacks and whites. Then I did add a gradient map with this gradient here to give it a little bit more of an orange tone. I also added a curves adjustment. So for the curves, I want to say I made subtle adjustments. Yeah, I made some subtle adjustments in the red curves, a little bit on the greens, and a little bit on the blues. Now, this is something now that I'm working on a little bit more. A year ago, I was kind of messing with the curves for color grading, but now it's something that's a little bit more important in my work now. A year ago, I wasn't really doing so much. Lately, it's very, very important in my work now. The hue saturation, here you can see I added a layer mask. I really wanted to tone down those reds. So if I go into the red slider, you'll see that I brought it down to -15. Once again, really trying to tone them down a little bit. And that's why I had the white mask. I brushed white on the car so that I can get a -15 saturation on there. The eyes reduce. This was just to reduce the little eye bags here, I think, right about here. So let's take a look at the before and after, which is just a subtle difference. Let me see if that was it. Well, I don't remember what exactly it was. Then let's go to layer 2. Now some of this stuff I don't remember because this is from a year ago. So let's see what layer 2 did. I want to say that layer 2 was probably just a flatten everything, or maybe just made something a little bit sharper. Yeah, it looked like it just made it something a little bit brighter. Might have been something to sharpen. Then I used Viveza, if I pronounced that right, which just sharpens the image just a little bit. I went into curves again, and let's see what I did here. I seriously don't remember. Here we go. Wait, looks like I added like another subtle S curve of some sort. Maybe did I go into the reds or the blues? I don't think I did. Nope. Nope. I just left it like that. Then I did add some color to her face a little bit. So you'll notice this was the before and then the after, using a mask so I can get a little bit more yellows and a little bit more browns on the skin tones there. And then I added another curves. Okay, there you go. And it looks like I just darkened it up a little bit. It's kind of almost, once again, kind of like an S curve here. And then I did burn her arm because it was very bright over here. So I did add a burn over there just to kind of make it a little bit more subtle, that brightness. And so this is where I saved the photo from last year, 2017. And then recently I looked at the picture. I hadn't seen this picture seriously like in a year. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I decided to add some more things that I do now in 2018. So I added a 2018 folder here. And so if I click this eyeball, this is what the 2018 would look like. Once again, I'm not going for like a crazy edit. I wanted to add just a little bit. So let me know in the comments. Does the 2018 little adjustment there make it look better? Or did I just keep the 2017 edit? Did Eli la cagué? Or Eli la cagaste? Let me know. I don't know. But let's look at the 2018 folder. All I essentially did was I just added, I just went back into curves a little bit, made some more adjustments. Let me turn off all these layers real quick. I'm gonna go through this one really quick, guys, because I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is. So essentially all I did is I added a curves. I think it was for color. You could see some of the curves there. I did a dodge and burn. And then I added a black and white layer for some contrast. I did add another dodge and burn with some clippings in there. And so for the 2018, I kind of like it. I don't know. You all let me know. But regardless, I know a lot of you guys are going to ask me to do a full edit. I am going to work on that during Christmas break. I am a full-time teacher. I'm going to be off for 2 weeks. So the full edit video will be coming during Christmas break. I'm still trying to decide which photo to use. I know everybody wanted to see the one of Julie. Maybe you want to see the full edit of here with Betsy to see how I do frequency separation and dodge and burn. But let me know. I might even post a vote with certain images where you guys can decide, you know, this is the image I want you to do a full edit on. Once again, where I show you everything from scratch. So with that said, guys, I do appreciate you guys tuning in and watching this video. Don't forget to like and comment, all that good stuff. Now, don't be chiflados. If I give you that raw file, you better leave me a thumbs up. You better leave me a comment, because I'm probably going to give you a raw file so that you guys can test out one of these images. Use some of the techniques that I showed you in the video. So don't be chiflados. Give me a thumbs up and give me a subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.